human beings are empathetic and do care about other people. It's just sometimes hard when there's a lot going on in the world, and when you're like, this is bad, they're like, oh, okay, great. But if they can experience it, they can form their own judgment. I'm Benita de Wit, and I'm the director of Manus Island project. So I started performing as a kid. I always liked, creating things and making, for my brother, little restaurants and stuff in the house. It was always about the event of making something. And so I started out performing, and I was a singer, and I did music theatre in high school and all that kind of thing. And then I started getting more interested in the kind of outside of it rather than being on the inside. I was always sitting there thinking but what if we did this, and what if we moved that here? And I started directing theatre, and that was when I was like, oh, this is kind of more what I want to be doing. This project started beginning of November after the Australian government shut down the Manus Regional Processing Centre, and I was reading news from over in New York and seeing all these images that the asylum seekers were taking of doing this protest pose, and even though I didn't know why they were doing it or what it was about, it was just really striking. I thought it was just such a strong image, because you look at it and it's very powerful, even though they're in some ways quite powerless there, and I thought it was really interesting. And I feel like there's a bit of a gap in really understanding who these people are, partly because there isn't much media access to Manus. And so I kind of kept thinking about this image and had this idea to find, 600 people, one for every person who's on Manus, and get them doing this pose, so kind of making this virtual protest online through images and video, so one person for every person on Manus, really putting a face to how many diverse different people are there.
The refugees, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't allow other people who live in the same world. They have different cultures, and it doesn't mean that you don't allow them to come into different countries and stay here. It's just because your country is in the middle of a war, you might die, and you should let people come and have refuge here.
And I realised that a big part of the project is actually just having those conversations, that if nothing else comes out of it other than having 600 conversations with people about Manus, that's already, to me, a worthwhile project. So I've kind of rethought what the project is. Originally I was just looking at getting the footage and then putting together a video, and the video would be the entire project. But now instead there's a website that we're putting all the stills from that we've shot so far, so you can kind of track the progress of it. So that feels kind of more like what the project is rather than just a finished product. It's the journey to it, and it's the conversations, and it's, all these different people.
People have been doing with art, really, trying to create an icon or an image for a cause. So yeah, and I think people respond to that a lot better than just seeing it on the news and switching off after work. Yeah.
I think it's about empathy. So factually, people can know things, and you can read things, and you can read numbers and statistics, but I feel like it doesn't really affect you emotionally. I feel like people get affected through story. It's one of the things I love about theatre, and that I find so powerful, is that you can tell someone there's someone being abused, and they'll go, oh, okay, that's bad. But if you actually show it, if you show this story, people respond, they mirror emotions and respond with empathy. So I think that's what art does really well, and depending on what stories they're telling, I think there's a way to really show people what other human beings are going through.